Welcome into the Fantasy Football Diagnostics Podcast, where we provide you with your weekly diagnosis of everything fantasy football. Whether it's season-long leagues, dynasty, DFS, or sometimes even IDP, we got you covered all year long. Let's do it. Let's get to it. Welcome into the Fantasy Football Diagnostics Podcast, and I'm your host, Jon June. It's Monday night on a rainy Monday night. Happy Labor Day, everybody. It's a solo pod tonight. No Greg. He's got some personal issues that he's got to, sort out himself. So, we are still going to bring this show here to you, covering news and notes. Matthew Stafford, Rams quarterback, has no limitations according to Sean McVay. So obviously, as we get to this Thursday night game here with the Buffalo Bills and the LA Rams, the storyline is going to be Matthew Stafford and that elbow, seeing how, he can turn out on Thursday. According to Sean McVay, again, has no limitations, but, that's obviously, coach speak until the games start for the Rams on Thursday. In terms of the Buffalo Bills, Isaiah McKenzie, he returned to practice on Sunday, so that's good news. Somebody that I had talked about in our wide receiver positional breakdown episode. So if you want to, go back and listen to those, you are definitely more than welcome. Obviously, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, wherever you can listen to most podcasts, you'll find us there. Also, you can watch us live 4 times a week on YouTube, as well as on Twitch and Periscope. So, you could always, feel free, subscribe, like, hit the notification bell so you could definitely catch our latest episodes. And, moving on to the rest of the news. Bill Belichick was complimentary of New England Patriots running back Ramondre Stevenson, of his route running this time. He's been complimentary of him a couple times throughout camp, so that's interesting to me because, Belichick is not really one to give, effusive praise of his own players, but Ramondre Stevenson, a second-year player, has been getting praise as of late. So, that's a guy that was Greg's running back sleeper. A guy that I am high on as well, so I definitely like his upside. So if you're still drafting, definitely someone that you could look to target. Rookie tight end Isaiah Likely is reportedly the closest thing to an answer that the Ravens have as a third receiving option. So Isaiah Likely, 4th round pick, I believe. The Baltimore Ravens. He plays tight end. We know that the Ravens offense is one that you're going to see a lot of backs. You're going to see a lot of tight ends. They're, getting a lot of, heavy, big personnel, and they want to beat you up. And Likely is the kind of guy, the kind of receiving threat, or offensive weapon, rather, in this case, that can line up either as a tight end position, or can line up in the slot or outside as a receiver, and make some things happen there. He kind of, I'm again, when I say things like this, I'm not saying that he is this caliber of player or will be this caliber of player, but he just does things on the field that kind of reminds me of this player in terms of his movement skills and things like that. But he kind of reminds me of Darren Waller in just how he moves. How he's able to make things happen after the catch. So he's definitely intriguing, probably more intriguing in dynasty leagues. But for a Ravens team that doesn't have a ton at receiver, they have Mark Andrews as their top weapon. Obviously, they're hoping that Rashad Bateman can take the leap and be, be a guy, going forward that we count on, or they can count on, and maybe we can count on from a fantasy perspective. But Isaiah Likely could very likely be the third option, there in Baltimore if one doesn't emerge. So there might be some weeks where he ends up as a guy that potentially, we could stream, or we'll look at and say, oh, his target share is higher than some starting tight ends on other teams. So like, maybe he's a guy we take a shot on, that way. So and then Jeff Wilson of the San Francisco 49ers running backs apparently seems to be the top of the bunch when it comes to backup running backs in San Francisco. Um, Jeff Wilson has obviously had his fair share of fantasy relevant moments. He's been, somebody that we've picked up off the waiver wire and started. And so it seems that he's somebody that, again, we will have to potentially look to at times in the 2022 fantasy football season. So has the edge over the rest of the backups in San Francisco. So again, we'll have to see what is up with Jeff Wilson there. But yes, this is the prediction episode. We are doing predictions. So you're going to get all of my divisional predictions, the 7 playoff teams, my Super Bowl predictions, as well as MVP and Offensive Player of the Year. So moving on to that segment and starting with the AFC East, not going to be much of a surprise here. This is probably, for the most part, the chalk. Coming in at 4, I've got the New York Jets. No surprise there. I mean, they're probably going to be more exciting than we've seen from them in the past. I mean, as evident by their fantasy relevance that we were talking about the other day. But again, I think all of that culminates in a finish at 4. The New England Patriots, who I have at 3, I don't think they are. This is probably the weakest roster that they've had in a long time, especially when you count that Tom Brady's not leading it, but Mac Jones played very well in his own right. Played well as a rookie. I just think that overall, from a talent perspective, this roster took a step back. I think that from a play calling perspective, they definitely took a step back with Josh McDaniels leaving to go to the Vegas Raiders, and now you have this contingent of Matt Patricia and Joe Judge, but I don't really have a whole lot of confidence in. So, and then combine that with the strength of the Patriots is typically on the defensive side of the ball has been their secondary. I think that there's they have they have good depth at the safety position, right? They have Devin McCourty and Kyle Duggar and Jabril Peppers, and I'm probably missing somebody in that group of safeties there, but their strength has typically been at the corner position, where in past they had J.C. Jackson, who left free agency, and then they had Stephon Gilmore the year before, or 2 years before that, and obviously they had Revis for a year as well. So it's like they've typically been strong at that position. I don't see them being that strong this year. And then you combine that with what I think, will be a step back on offense. They're just not in love with the Patriots, and I don't think that they can finish 2 in this division. I think that goes to the Miami Dolphins, who the Dolphins have made a ton of upgrades. They were able to acquire Tyreek Hill, so that provides an explosiveness to their offense that frankly this division doesn't really have, and outside of maybe Buffalo, but the Dolphins also upgraded their offensive line. They made some additions on defense as well, so I think the Dolphins are in they're definitely in a good spot here to finish at least 2 in the AFC East, and potentially make a run here at a playoff spot. And then obviously number 1 is the Buffalo Bills. They're not playing for a division championship here. They're not playing to be AFC East champions. They're playing to be world champions. So that's obviously something. Having them here as number one is easy decision. Not it's just a matter of for the Bills what happens to them in the playoffs and going forward. So moving on to the NFC East, starting at number four, New York Giants. I think Brian Daboll definitely comes in and helps change some of the perspective of the Giants a little bit. Especially in the offense side of the ball. Well, last year we were watching Joe Judge call for quarterback kneels, from his uh, own, inside his own 10-yard line on like second and third down, so he can punt. So it's kind of crazy to see that. But, Daniel Jones, I think, has a chance to survive here under Brian Daboll. So we'll see what happens there. Defensively, I think, under Wink Martindale, I think that they'll be strong defensively. Their pass rush will be one that is formidable in terms of one you have to look out for. So definitely think that the Giants, while being a strong out, will still finish fourth in this division. Third will be the Washington Commanders. Carson Wentz definitely is a slight upgrade at the quarterback position for them over what Taylor Heineke had provided for most of the year last year. But I definitely don't think that that leads to them being a team that gets significantly better in 2022. A team I do think gets better in 2022 is the Philadelphia Eagles, who I have finishing as number 2 in this division. I think that they, all the additions that they made, AJ Brown on the offensive side of the football, adding, a guy like Cam Jurgens in the draft who's looked really good and is their future at center, but, is going to play some guard while Jason Kelsey continues to, to play out his career as the starting center for Philadelphia. I think that on the defensive side of the ball, Jordan Davis is going to help that defense tremendously. They also upgraded significantly at linebacker. So I think that the Eagles, also got James Bradbury from the Giants, to pair up with Darius Slay to form, one of the top corner duos. So I think the Eagles, could potentially make a push here for winning this division and potentially a playoff spot here. Especially when you consider I don't really, the Cowboys are a team that I do have finishing first in the division, obviously. I don't love I don't really love tying myself to Mike McCarthy there. His one of his teams in Dallas haven't really been disciplined, and that's kind of how it was with the Packers as well. So it's tough for me to sit there and confidently back the Cowboys to win the East. I think they're definitely talented, but coaching does matter in the NFL. And if the Eagles have been able to close the talent gap, uh, then it's not far fetched that they do win the East. The Tyron Smith injury for the Cowboys definitely adds some concern there. If I'm backing the Cowboys to win the East, we know that the splits with Dak Prescott. They just signed Jason Peters to their practice squad, and the plan is to eventually get him to the active roster. But it's definitely a tricky situation. Taking the Cowboys to win the East, but that was my original selection, so I'm gonna stick with that. Although the Eagles are definitely a nice option if you were gonna, bet responsibly, of course. Um, Moving on to the AFC North, and this one, yeah, it wasn't as tough as maybe as a tough time as I had going through the East, but the NFC East, that is. But the AFC North, the Browns finishing fourth. I mean, They paid all that money to Deshaun Watson. He's going to miss 11 games. It kind of is what it is at that point. I think the Browns they have a good enough ecosystem that they can win, that they can tread water without Deshaun Watson and which Kobe Brissett at quarterback. They have a strong offensive line. I mean, it's banged up right now, but when healthy, it is one of the best one of the best offensive lines in football. They have obviously got Nick Chubb, who's phenomenal running back. And that outside zone run scheme that they have, that Kevin Stefanski's installed, it's one of the best run games in football. Nick Chubb, again, he averages almost 5 yards a carry since entering into that scheme. So I think it's actually over 5. But anyway, I think that they'll tread enough water. The defense is good. I mean, I don't think the defense. I mean, they do get credit, but I don't think they're getting enough credit per se. When like Carolina, for example, and we'll talk about the games, but they're getting 2.5 points, and when you look at that defense, the pass rush that they have between Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney, and then their corners between Denzel Ward, who's probably one of the best in football, and then on the other side of him, they've got Greg Newsome, who's a good player as well. So, they have Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, who's a good linebacker as well. So they got some talent on the defensive side of the football. So I think, again, like I said, they'll tread water. With Jacoby Brissett at quarterback before Deshaun Watson gets back. Moving on to number 3, I've got the Pittsburgh Steelers. This one, again, this is another one where the quarterback situation is questionable. I mean, Mitch Trubisky is not very doesn't inspire much confidence as a team that I want to back for the season. If you're a Steelers fan, I think you could sell yourself this story, but obviously it's really going to come down to Mike Tomlin and the preparation that he's going to instill in his team, and is he's never had a losing record in the NFL, so it's going to be tough to see him continue to do that, but he doesn't have Roethlisberger, which he's done a lot of that without Roethlisberger too, because Roethlisberger has missed a decent amount of games, so he's had to continue to win even without having Big Ben. I think there was also that year that wasn't a losing season, but I think they went 8-8 when Big Ben missed like most of the season. So definitely think on the back of this defense and Najee Harris, and then the playmakers that they have at wide receiver. I think again there'll be a team that treads enough water that they don't lose most of their games, and probably end up being a team that goes 9-7, or I guess you can't go 9-7, 9-8, or maybe they go 8-9. Who knows? Maybe it's his first losing season. So we'll see. As the 2 in the AFC North, I've got the Baltimore Ravens. Again, this one was, right. It's like between Cincinnati and Baltimore. What are you going to do? And so I chose Cincy, but Baltimore, I definitely think makes a comeback. I mean, we talked about Lamar Jackson on this show and the kind of year that we expect him to have. And if he's having a really good season, I think this team is going to go as as Lamar Jackson goes. But I also think that this defense is, they're going to be healthier in 2022 than they were in 2021. So that's obviously going to help the whole team. It's going to help the offense, more possessions, or more opportunities to score touchdowns. And I think the Ravens have a comeback year here. And then the no 1 seed, the Super Bowl runner-ups, I'm going with the Cincinnati Bengals and coming out of the AFC North. You got Joe Burrow in year 3, Jamar Chase year 2, T. Higgins year 3. These guys, obviously Tyler Boyd, he's a vet. So these guys, they're all coming back. Joe Mixon's coming back. They're most of their defense is coming back. So I think that, they got their core in place. And Joe Burrow is a baller, man. So we always say on this show. I don't even know, I forget where I heard it from, but I say it all the time. Joey covers, so because he does, and so um, when it gets time to start making those picks, we'll just have to remember that in those games that Joey covers, and it's always nice when you're backing the Bengals on a bet and you're watching Joe Burrow there work his magic there late in the game. So definitely a talented roster, a talented team, one that I think is going to challenge for not just the one seed in the AFC North, but potentially the one seed in the AFC. So I think they have their sights set on that. Um, so we'll see. So moving on to the NFC North, the fourth team in the NFC North for me is going to be the Chicago Bears. Yeah, they didn't really help. They have not helped Justin Fields at all. They've, tore down that roster. Um, got rid of Khalil Mack. They it seemed like, by all accounts, they were trying to get rid of Robert Quinn, but they didn't get that one done. Um, so I think Eddie Jackson is still there. I think he said at one point he felt like the Will Smith meme, the Fresh Prince one. So um, yeah, I mean, Matt Eberflus comes in from the Indianapolis Colts there to run his scheme. So we'll see what happens on the defensive side of the football. Roquan Smith is not very happy. David Montgomery is the guy who's in a contract year in addition to Roquan Smith. So it's curious to see how they handle this situation, but it seems kind of like the tear down before a massive rebuild with the Chicago Bears there. So yeah, they could finish as the worst team in the NFL, but for right now, I'm just going to put them down as the worst team in the NFC North. A third team will be the Detroit Lions. I mean, the Lions are funny, man. I mean, not funny. They're like fun to root for. They're like, unless you are obviously like a Vikings fan or a Packers or a Bears fan, or you have some massive ill will against the Lions, unless you were a fan of those teams, I really don't understand what that would be. But anyway, the Detroit Lions, I mean, Dan Campbell, when he was hired, everyone was talking about, is this guy going to be good? His press conference was kind of crazy and like all this stuff. And I'm like, hey, man, I love this guy, man. And as we see more and more of him, Hard Knocks, he was great. So like it's like when I see Dan Campbell and the way he talks to his players and how passionate he is. I mean, this guy was crying because they were losing like one possession games. Like this guy really cares. He wants to win. He famously told his team that he would uh actually I think that was Mike Vrabel. But either way, um Dan Campbell is really passionate about winning football games and he would, you know, sacrifice a lot to win for the Detroit Lions. So, um, number two, I'm going with the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, I guess this is pretty much chalk. How I have it here, but the Minnesota Vikings are a team that I really like. Even to potentially make the playoffs, I like them. I think their offense is going to be so much better under Kevin O'Connell. It's going to be, I think, similar to kind of what we saw with the Chargers last year, how we saw their pass rates, just completely, their neutral game script pass rates just completely rise. We saw better usage out of Justin Herbert. And I think we see something similar here with Kirk Cousins, right? Kirk Cousins has always been efficient. He's always been, a quarterback that was capable of putting up, huge numbers and big fantasy performances. Um, but he just doesn't do it consistently. But I think when you play for a head coach like Mike Zimmer, who's going to suffocate you with his, defensive minded identity and his, the desire to run the football and to cater to his defense, I think that when you play for a head coach like that, it really limits your upside. And so I think that Kirk Cousins here playing for a innovative head coach and Kevin O'Connell, is going to potentially lift his ceiling here and potentially lift the ceiling of this team. You know, Kevin O'Connell strikes me as, and I don't know him personally, but coming from, coaching with Sean McVay, you've got to be well informed. You've got to be, um, you've got to prepare. And I'm not saying that coaches don't prepare, that other coaches don't prepare, but they really get in depth with their analysis in terms of looking at analytics and things of that nature. And teams that tend to do that, I'm not saying all the teams that do that, but teams that tend to do that make better decisions. They tend to make better and smarter decisions, and that ultimately leads to winning more football games. The aggregation of marginal gains, right? Like, it leads to winning more football games typically. So I'm looking forward to seeing that bear out in Minnesota. So we'll see how that goes. But I definitely like the Minnesota Vikings as a team to take a step forward in 2022. And then there's the Green Bay Packers. It doesn't really matter. It hasn't mattered like who's been on the team or, what's been going on. As long as 12 is back there under under Matt LaFleur, the Green Bay Packers have been successful, right? 13, at least 13 wins, or it's a 12 or 13 under Matt LaFleur each of these last 3 years. That's incredible. It's not anything to sneeze at. So I think, this division once again goes through Green Bay, and some team is going to have to knock the Packers off the top. Moving on to the AFC South, and this one, number 4, I've got the Houston Texans. I think that we're going to find out what Davis Mills is. We'll see, if he is somebody that the Houston Texans can take all these draft picks and build around. But we're going to have to find out in 2022 if that's the case. I mean, he's got weapons with Brandon Cooks. I mean, obviously, you guys know me. I'm into Nico Collins. Excuse me, I'll drink some water. I'm into Nico Collins. I was before the draft last year and things of that nature. So I have confidence that Davis Mills could take a step. I mean, if you're playing 2 quarterback leagues, I think Davis Mills is somebody that should be on your radar as a, potential 3rd quarterback. But yeah, I'm curious to see what happens. I like what they've done in the secondary, adding Derek Stingley, who, by all accounts has looked really good. He's looked the part. I like what, the safety they got out of Baylor and Jalen Pitre. So, we'll see what happens defensively there for the Houston Texans. But ultimately, I think it culminates in them finishing 4th. 3rd, I like the Jacksonville Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence, I think he's my sleeper quarterback. So I obviously am anticipating that he takes a step forward in 2022. They've invested so much into him, but they've also invested into that defensive side of the football, where I think they have so many athletes on that side of the ball that, really, creates the situation here where they can just generate, pass rush and turnovers with their speed and their length and their athleticism. So that's really fun to watch as a football fan. But, if you're somebody that really likes defense, as I do. So I definitely look forward to seeing what Jacksonville can cook up with, the likes of the other Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker. So don't think they'll win a lot of football games or anything like that, but I think they'll be fun to watch for sure. And then number 2 in the AFC South, I'm going with the Tennessee Titans. They obviously get Derrick Henry back, so that's going to be a huge plus. But they lose AJ Brown, so that's going to be tough to just completely overcome. I know they drafted Treylon Burks, the rookie wide receiver out of Arkansas, and they trade for Robert Woods from the LA Rams, so they hopefully can make up for that loss there. But I think ultimately that it will, that the culture just going to be a better team. I think that they they played really well last year, and probably if it wasn't for Carson Wentz, end up winning that division. But I think the what Matt Ryan adds, to your offense as a quarterback, just like the hidden yardage, like the sacks that he's not going to take, like the pass attempts that he's gonna the passes that he's actually going to attempt, right? Those are going to be completions, the ones that, we don't necessarily see. We might see Carson Wentz, throw the ball away or, take a sack. And we're like, oh man, that's not his fault or this offensive lineman. But, Matt Ryan might take that play and make it a completion, right? So like, those are the kinds of things, or maybe he checks into a run that's more favorable, right? So like those are the kinds of things I think Matt Ryan's going to add to this Colts team and this Colts roster, with Frank Reich, who's a quarterback whisperer per se. So I think the Colts take a leap forward here and finish as the 1 seed in the AFC South. Moving on to the NFC South, the Falcons come in at number 4 for me. Marcus Mariota, I don't really know what to expect. I think it'll be interesting, right? Like, I don't think that they'll be short of points at, certain weeks. I mean, I think between Drake London at wide receiver and obviously Kyle Pitts, how big of a fan I am of him, how much of a fan we are of him on this show. I think that Kyle Pitts can be absolutely dominant this year. But he also is going to depend on Marcus Mariota, and I think Desmond Ridder plays some games as well to throw him the football. So there are going to be some inconsistent weeks for the Falcons, but I think ultimately, there's going to be enough there where Drake London, Kyle Pitts, those guys are guys that we'll be able to depend on week to week. Cordell Patterson, I know that he was a guy that, we were on last year, but it's tough. Kind of at the end of last year, they were trying to show us that, hey, well, I don't think we really believe in, maybe we shouldn't have been using, Cordell Patterson this much. Maybe we shouldn't have been working him this much. And they were trying to ease his workload. And, so I'm curious to see, with all the additions that they've made in the backfield, what kind of role he actually ends up playing this year. But ultimately, I think the Atlanta Falcons are a team we're going to want to target, in fantasy, from a defensive perspective. I think that their defense is one that we want to target. I think that, from a DFS perspective, their games might end up being ones that we want to target, where we bring back, we will bring, we could go to Kyle Pitts and Drake London and bring back a run back option from the other team. So definitely be one that could be favorable for us to target. 3 is the Carolina Panthers. Baker Mayfield gets to start at quarterback over Sam Darnold, who suffers a high ankle sprain anyway. So, I think the Panthers, I don't really know what to expect. I mean, they do get Christian McCaffrey back, but I don't know how much that's going to add to the win-loss column. I think Matt Rule is, and I like Matt Rule. I did. I know he was interviewing for the Jets job a while back, and they were going to hire him, but there was something about him wanting to pick, his offensive coordinator, and the Jets were like, no. And then he was like, well, if I can't pick my OC, I don't want to work here. And then went back to Baylor and then got the Panthers job the next year. So he strikes me as somebody who's kind of in over his head. So I could very well see the Panthers imploding and finishing as the last team in this division. But, just based on the roster, based on the win-loss totals, based on what they did last year, the model has them coming out as the 3rd team in the NFC South, and I don't fully disagree with it. So I, just because of how bad Atlanta could be, I will stick with Carolina here at 3. The New Orleans Saints come in at 2. They're a team that I think that they surprised some people. Jameis Winston was playing well last year. They were a team that were going to be strong defensively, and you were going to have to worry about Alvin Kamara. But now they get Michael Thomas back, right? So that's the situation here where I look at the New Orleans Saints offense, and if they can score some points, which I think they're more than capable of doing, they can score some points, then their defense is good enough where they can hold people uh to keep them into these low scoring games. I like the Saints this year. I think that they surprised some people. But the number one team in this division is obviously the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, led by Tom Brady. And when Tom Brady is your quarterback, you have a very, very significant chance of winning your division. And that's pretty much just how it goes. So, obviously, being real, the Bucks offensively, their core is pretty much the same. It's Brady, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. They add Julio, they add Russell Gage, they get Leonard Fournette, and obviously they have Leonard Fournette, but he's their lead back unquestionably. Um, their defense is still strong. The only question is, do they shift their philosophy now that Bruce Arians isn't the head coach? I don't think that they do that. Obviously, Todd Bowles is the head coach, and so he's gonna have his say goes pretty much. But Byron Leftwich, who is the offensive coordinator, was originally hired by Bruce Arians, came up with Bruce Arians, was the OC the previous year. I don't see him significantly switching up what he says, what he does or what he's used to calling, because he all of a sudden he's got a defensive minded head coach. I think Todd Bowles is a professional. He's gonna, he's obviously seen what Byron Leftwich can do. He trusts Byron Leftwich. Bruce Arians is one of his best friends. So if Bruce Arians trusts Leftwich, then he's going to trust Leftwich. I think this thing just keeps rolling. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? So moving on to the AFC West, the most intriguing division in football. Like, it has to be the most intriguing division in the NFL. Like, no questions asked. But somebody has to finish fourth, and only one team can finish first. So with that being said, fourth place, the Las Vegas Raiders. That's just the way the cookie crumbled here. I mean, they're going to be a good team. They're going to be a really good team. Derek Carr is a good quarterback. They've got weapons on offense between Devontae Adams, Hunter Renfrow, Darren Waller. The running backs are going to be, by committee, most likely Josh Jacobs, Amir Abdullah, Zamir White, Brandon Bolden. These guys are going to be multiple on offense for sure. I did think defensively, the pass rush is going to be strong. They've got Chandler Jones. They've got Max Crosby. So I think that defensively they'll be strong with the pass rush. I just don't think that something is missing with the Raiders that these other teams, and maybe it's the magic at quarterback, right? Maybe if you take the quarterbacks from these other rosters and you put them on the Raiders, like, I feel, you flip flop Derek Carr with whatever quarterback is, one of these other quarterbacks. Like, I might feel this, that team is going to finish fourth, and that's probably what it really comes down to. So that being said, yeah, third is, this one hurts, but it's the Chargers, man. It's the Chargers. You guys know I'm basically like a closet Chargers supporter here. I think that Justin Herbert's one of the best quarterbacks in football. Brandon Staley was one of my favorite head coaching candidates in the hiring cycle from 2 years ago. So I think that's probably why I like them so much. And Derwin James, he's an excellent football player, one of my favorites to watch. So just that aspect of it is probably why I really like the Chargers so much, and why I support them, when I watch them play and things like that. But I do have them finishing third here. Again, this is going to be tough. This division is tough. I just it's tough to choose a team to win and dominate these, all the other teams in this division, right? They're going to split some, and there's going to be teams here, that steal from another team, right? Steal a game from another team, right? So they're just all going to beat up on each other. But ultimately, I think the Chargers finished third. I've got the Chiefs finishing second. I think the loss of Tyreek Hill is definitely a factor, definitely plays a factor. But it's something where I think that the lack of a true run game, like consistent run game, is going to come back and bite the Chiefs. They not saying that they have to run the football. It's just the fact that like they don't have a guy where they can look to and they can say, hey, we're going to give you the ball like 25, 30 times just because we have to, right? Like Damian Williams filled that role for them. They don't really have a guy like that right now. I know that, Clyde, they drafted Clyde to be that. They've wanted him to be that. He hasn't really been that, although I do think Clyde has a better PPR year than people might think. I've been banging that drum for a little bit, but I think ultimately that's going to be what hurts this Chiefs team as they get into, November, and not November, but just January and February. So, and the number one is the Denver Broncos. I think ultimately what it comes down to is Russell Wilson is obviously one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, but I think that they also have a defense that's dominant, and their pass rush. Bradley Chubb is obviously there, but it's really their secondary. Patrick Surtain at corner. They've got Justin Simmons at safety. I'm blanking on who the other corner is. Then they have a Bryce Callahan, and then they've got another corner there, but their secondary is like clamps, right? So like, I think when you combine that with the offense that they're going to put in with Russell Wilson, allow him to throw the football, they're going to have this run game as well. I think that this is a situation here where the Broncos can really, set themselves apart in the AFC West. And that was tough. Moving on to the NFC West. Number 4, no surprise, is the Seattle Seahawks. It has to be. I mean, you go from Russell Wilson to some combination of Geno Smith and Drew Lock. It's going to be bad. So, Seattle, good luck to you. I think that Pete Carroll, could be the last year for you there in Seattle. I don't know, it wasn't there when the decisions were made to move on from Russell Wilson, but that can't be one where you make a decision like that and you survive to see the fruits of your labor. Number 3 is the San Francisco 49ers. I really don't know. There's another team that I support here more than the New York Jets, or as much as the New York Jets, more than the Chargers, or as much as the Chargers. It would have to be the San Francisco 49ers. The Niners, having them here at third is not one that's ideal for me and my rooting interest in terms of like Kyle Shanahan and loving what he does. And obviously, if I love Trey Lance this year, then the Niners, I'm expecting big things out of them. But it just really comes down to the I guess the inexperience at quarterback, right? Like, I mean, you're going from Jimmy Garoppolo to Trey Lance, and it's kind of similar to the Matt Ryan and Carson Wentz thing, right? So like maybe some of those things are hidden that we can't see, but the Niners have a strong defense. They're going to have a strong run game. Trey Lance is going to make plays, so I think that they can definitely make a run here, and either make the playoffs or potentially finish even higher in this division than I have them ranked. But It's definitely going to be a team to watch for sure. Number two is the Arizona Cardinals. So, Kyler Murray, I think this is year four for Kyler. Cliff Kingsbury in, I think, year four for him as well. Not somebody that I've always been was high on Cliff Kingsbury year one, but then these last couple years I was a little bit lower on Cliff. Especially after 2021 or 2020 rather. Uh, I was lower on Cliff, and he's definitely somebody that his methods are a little less than desirable sometimes. Some of the decision making that he makes, and some of the decisions that he makes, some of the spots that he puts Kyler Murray in. But they continue to win. They won last year. They made the playoffs last year, albeit it was not a great performance. But I think that they have enough talent to win. Their defensive, the talent on defense is, better than it has been in years past. So I definitely think that the Cardinals are a team that can, make some noise in the NFC playoffs for sure, right? And when you have a quarterback like Kyler Murray, you always have an opportunity to make some noise there. And then number one is the LA Rams, the Super Bowl champions. No reason really not to have them here as the one seed. They've pretty much the core is returning. You've got Matthew Stafford, you've got Cooper Kupp, you swap out Robert Woods with Allen Robinson, you've got Aaron Donald on the defensive side of the football. You bring in a Bobby Wagner, you've got a Jalen Ramsey. You lose Von Miller, but they still are. They still have that core in place to allow them to continue to be a dominant team in the NFC, right? And so Sean McVay, one of the best coaches in football, I think that he's going to continue to do what he does with the Rams to make them a contender. So that wraps up the divisions. Let's jump into the playoff teams. No, we just ran through the divisions. Let's jump through the playoff teams. And my AFC playoff teams. I already told you who the division winners were, so let's just start there. At the 1 seed, I've got the Buffalo Bills. The 2 seed, I got the Denver Broncos. The 3 seed, I got the Cincinnati Bengals. The 4 seed, I have the Indianapolis Colts. At 5, I have the Kansas City Chiefs. At 6, I have the Los Angeles Chargers. And at 7, I've got the Baltimore Ravens. And that one was tough because, again, we talked about the Vegas Raiders, right? Like you could theoretically put all 4 AFC West teams in, but then that means you can't put in another team from another division that didn't win their division, right? So that means you can't put in a team like Baltimore. You can't put in a team like Tennessee. You can't put in a Miami, Miami or New England, whoever wins that division, or whoever comes second place in that division, right? So in these instances, I had to go Baltimore here as the 7 seed. So don't feel bad about it for sure. Anytime I can, pick Lamar, I'm gonna like my chances there. Moving on to the NFC side, I've got the Dallas Cowboys as the 1 seed, the Los Angeles Rams as the 2 seed, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as the 3 seed, Green Bay Packers as the 4 seed. As the 5 seed, I have the Philadelphia Eagles. As the 6 seed, I have the Arizona Cardinals. And as the 7 seed, I have the San Francisco 49ers. So, yep, my Niners make it in anyway. I said my Niners, but you know what I meant. I'm a Jets fan. I don't want people to hit me in my mentions talking about, oh, John's a Niners fan and a Niners fan. I said we by accident, Freudian slip. Anyway, I guess I'll give my MVP and my offensive player of the year before I go to the Super Bowl picks. And with the offensive player of the year, this was tough because I was really going between two people. It was between Jonathan Taylor and Justin Jefferson for me. But I'm going Justin Jefferson on this one, man. I mean, we just saw Cooper Cup, win that award last year and, get the Triple Crown, receptions, yards, touchdowns. And again, I've talked about this, every time I've had an opportunity to discuss the wide receiver position, every time I've had an opportunity to discuss Justin Jefferson, anytime I had an opportunity to discuss Kirk Cousins, right? I think that Kevin O'Connell is going to make an impact here on the Minnesota Vikings, and one that is going to, similar to what we saw from Austin Eckler, in the Chargers offense, taking on the Alvin Kamara role and pretty much delivering to a T, right? Finishes the RB2, had I think 20 touchdowns, had 900 yards rushing, about 600 or 700 yards receiving. Like, he played it to a T. And this is what I'm expecting from Justin Jefferson, right? To play that similar role that Cooper Kupp did. And that means being a Triple Crown award winner from a guy who, again, Austin Eckler, you could debate about whether he's more physically gifted or talented than Alvin Kamara. I would go with Alvin Kamara on that one, but you could legitimately make that argument if you wanted to. You're not going to convince me that Cooper Kupp is more physically gifted or athletic than Justin Jefferson. I'm not saying that Cooper Kupp is not athletic or physically gifted or at all. I'm not saying that one bit. But just watch Justin Jefferson and the stuff he does and the sauce he's giving people on Sundays. And Cooper Kupp is saucing people, but it just doesn't look the same as when Justin Jefferson is doing it. And, you give Jefferson those opportunities, you put him in those positions to make some of those plays, and I'm pretty sure he's going to deliver. So, Justin Jefferson is the offensive player of the year for me. Most valuable player of the year for me is going to be Russell Wilson of the Denver Broncos. I think that, we're going to see some things from Russ that we haven't seen before. He's going to throw the football at a high clip. He's going to throw touchdowns at a high clip, which he's always done. But if the attempts go up, then the touchdowns are going to go up, right? So I think that, with Denver having traded all those assets for him, having signed him to this big money contract, that they're going to, lean on Russell Wilson, and they're going to want to show that was, the smart decision to make. And they want to show that, it was smart to trade for him. It was smart to pay for him, pay him all that money. So I think ultimately here, Russ is awarded his first MVP, of the first MVP of his career. So moving on to the Super Bowl picks, right? So I read that playoff teams. I did go through the scenarios here, earlier today. I'm not going to break them all down, but I will tell you who my final two are. And trying to quickly think who the home team is. I believe it is the AFC this year, which is the home team. Could quickly look that up. Yeah, I guess I couldn't quickly find it, but I don't want to give away who I have winning, so I'll just say we'll do it alphabetically. I've got the AFC representative Denver Broncos facing off against the NFC representative Philadelphia Eagles. I have the Broncos making it out as the 2 seed and the Eagles making it out as the 5 seed. So I actually went with the Denver Broncos here over the Philadelphia Eagles. And yeah, I didn't it was definitely tough to go through the scenarios, and obviously I'm prognosticating on this on September 5th, 2022, on something that is like 3 or 4 months away. So bear with me on those, but definitely took the Broncos over the Eagles. And if you did want to take that bet, the Broncos are plus 950 on DraftKings Sportsbook to make the playoffs, or to make the Super Bowl. The Eagles are plus 1,000 on DK to make the Super Bowl, and the Broncos are plus 1,800 to ultimately win. So those are 3 bets that I put down a little something on today to put my money where my mouth is. So I guess that's what we'll be rooting for the year. So we'll see what happens there. But everyone, that's my predictions for the 2022 NFL season. Definitely appreciate y'all kicking it with us on this Labor Day evening, rainy in the New York area. But definitely come check us out for our regular season programming starting on Wednesday evening. We'll be back right here on Thursday for you to preview the part 1 games. That means pretty much all the 1 p.m. games. Then right back here on Saturday morning to do game previews part 2, where we we'll preview all the remaining games on the slate. And then we're back here on Monday to recap week 1 and the week that was. So excited for some NFL football. The next time we will see y'all, the next time we'll be on here, we'll be talking about an actual NFL game that matters, and we'll be talking about helping you out with your fantasy lineup. So definitely tap in with us on Wednesday when we do our Thursday night previews of the Buffalo Bills traveling to LA to take on the LA Rams. And until next time, everybody, we appreciate you. We love you. And make sure you subscribe, hit like, do all that cool stuff. And we'll talk to you later. Peace.